Hi everyone, this is Matt Seifer with the Real Estate Finance Initiative here at Georgetown McDonough. Here today to talk about the internal rate of return as part of our ongoing real estate returns series. The internal rate of return is also known as the total return, and it's called the total return because it's really inclusive of two parts, an income component and an appreciation component, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. The true definition of the internal rate of return is it's the annual rate of earnings on an investment. And unlike the income return and the cash return, which we discussed previously, the internal rate of return assesses investment performance over a multi-year hold period. So if you recall, the income return and the cash return were only focused on an individual year. So in order to calculate the internal rate of return, or the IRR, you need three components. The very first component is the purchase price for the investment. The second component, which is also known as the income component, is the cash flow over your hold period. And the final component is the residual value, which is the appreciation component. So we talk about the income component, that is in reference to the cash flow, the income associated with the leases on the property, whereas the appreciation component is the residual value. And when we say appreciation, the anticipation is that you're able to sell the investment for more than what you acquired it for in the beginning. So the residual value is in effect the expected sale price, and it's determined by capitalization of the NOI for the year following the hold period. So if you're expecting a 10-year hold, you would capitalize the year 11 NOI, which is an often confused element of the internal rate of return calculation, because why would you capitalize the year 11 NOI if you're only anticipating holding the property for 10 years? And the reason is the year 11 NOI is the next buyer's first year of NOI. So if you think about it, the going in cap rate that we discussed prior is the pro forma year 1 NOI over the purchase price. So the residual is the same thing. You're only doing it at the end of the hold using the exit capitalization rate. So in effect, your sale price is the purchase price using the year 1 pro forma for your next buyer. Now, the calculation of your residual value is based upon, in part, the exit capitalization rate. The exit capitalization rate is the year 11, in this case, NOI, over the residual value, which equates to the cap rate, or just another way of looking at it, the year 11 NOI over the cap rate equals the residual value. So, exit cap rates are perhaps one of the most debated valuation metrics in real estate. Because you are guessing where the capital market's appetite will be for a subject property somewhere in the future. And in the case of our analysis here, you're anticipating this in the 10th year of your hold, which frankly anything is possible. But for the purposes of actually calculating the internal rate of return, you need to provide a residual valuation. So in effect, where do the exit cap rates come from? So the most basic approach is you simply add 50 to 100 basis points to your going-in cap rate. And why you would do this is because this is a demonstration that the property is older at the disposition. So in other words, in 10 years, the property is 10 years older, so your cap rate in effect should be higher. And a higher cap rate is representative of a higher degree of risk. An older property, higher degree of risk associated with it due to upkeep perhaps. It's also a conservatism that a lot of investors use. It's a conservative hedge, and there are other approaches in terms of deriving the exit cap rate. Some of the more sophisticated approaches result from a buildup in the long-term discount rate. You add in your capex as a percent of market value and subtract the long-term average growth rate to arrive at more of a sustainable cap rate, if you will. Any way you derive the number, it can have a profound impact on valuation, and exit cap rates should be heavily scrutinized when you're performing your analysis. So let's revisit our example. Remember, we are contemplating the purchase of a retail property in Ballston, Virginia called Hoya Point. It's a stabilized property that is leased to a credit quality tenant, so in this case only one tenant, on a triple net basis in a long-term lease. You've underwritten the deal as best you can, meaning you've verified and adjusted all of the elements of the income statement, and you've developed the 11-year cash flow, which we're going to talk about here momentarily. So the question is, what is your IRR, or what is my total return? So we have the 11-year cash flow here for Hoya Point, and I've collapsed the cash flow into the major categories for simplicity. So you can see that our going-in cap rate at a value of $12.25 million is a 5%. And you see the individual cash flows that we've calculated as on the cash flow before taxes line. You can see that our residual value is calculated by the year 11 NOI divided by 5.5%. And in this case, the exit cap rate, which is the 5.5%, was utilized based upon the basic rule of thumb of adding the 50 to 100 basis points to your original or your going in cap rate, more to exhibit the point rather than to really discuss how you would arrive at an exit cap rate. And ultimately, you need to be aware that for your year 10 cash flow, it is not only the 10th year of cash flow, but you have to add in the residual value that you have calculated. So you can see the total year 10 cash flow of a little over $16.25 million. So under my cash flow series here, you can see the original purchase price of $12.25 million, the individual annual cash flows for years 1 to 9, and then in year 10, you get the 10th year cash flow from the property as well as your residual value. If you were to use Excel to calculate IRR, the formula is here in front of us. And the values would simply be the string of numbers beginning with a negative $12.25 million and ending with your year 10 cash flow. And the guess is simply an estimate of the IRR to assist Excel. You would typically use 10%. This results in an internal rate of return of 7.12%. Now, generally what happens when you're acquiring an asset and you're underwriting the investment, you may tinker with the purchase price to arrive at an IRR that is more appropriate for your investment requirements. So for instance, maybe 7.12% is too low. You're not getting enough return for the risk that you're taking, and you believe you need now an 8% IRR or an 8.5% IRR. So you can see by virtue of increasing your IRR, you are decreasing obviously the purchase price that you are providing for the investment. And you need to remember that as you decrease or as you alter the price, your going in cap rate will adjust as well. So for instance, in time zero, if you were to apply a purchase price of $11.03 million, your cap rate goes from 5% to 5.55%. And you also need to be aware of, by adjusting the price as you have done, you may be less competitive in the bid due to the higher required returns that you have for the investment. So that concludes our session on the internal rate of return. Should you have any further questions, I would encourage you to reach out to me. Thank you.